The last step in preparing for an interview is choosing the materials that you will take with you. I have some handy hints. First of all, remember appearances. Just as you dressed carefully and groomed yourself carefully so that you would look good, you have to consider how the materials you take with you might appear to those on the other side of the table. A simple solution is a nice clean manila folder like this. You can organize your materials, you won't be carrying separate things that you have to keep track of. But also make sure it's a clean, fresh one. A used one like this does not display a very good image of you. An even better choice is one of these very handsome portfolios. This is a zippered one, some don't zipper. Zippered is nice because things don't fall out before you want them to. And inside, I have a place to put papers, I have a nice notepad, and I have a place for my pen. And even consider the pen. You don't want some cheap little thing that you got free at the bank carrying someone else's logo, but a nice pen that says, I'm an executive, or whatever level that you're interviewing for. So now let's take a look at what materials I think you ought to bring along. If you haven't already given your references, sometimes that is part of the online application package, but sometimes it's not. You'll want to bring your references with you. You don't want to be in the position where your candidacy is held up because they're waiting for you to transfer your references. So bring, I would say, a couple of copies in case there's more than one interviewer. Bring a couple copies with you so that you can just hand it over at the time of your interview. Obviously, if you're interviewing virtually, you will have sent these ahead of time. You don't want to be waiting for that after the fact. I also suggest that you bring along with you a copy of the job vacancy. Obviously, the people interviewing you know what their vacancy says, but it's nice to refresh your mind, especially if you have to sit and wait before the interview. Looking through this while you're in the waiting room is going to help you to focus on what points do you need to make during that interview. I also like to bring a copy of my resume with me, and that's in case they don't have it on hand or you want to make a point about your resume and the interviewers don't remember. You can just hand this to them. It's sort of a two-edged sword here. In this case, I have not stapled the pages because I want to be able to very quietly in my lap pull one page off and look at the second one. But if you don't think you'll need that, then you'll want to staple it so that you can just hand it over. So you can choose that. In my portfolio, I had a fixed notebook, but in a manila folder, you wouldn't have that. So you'll want to bring along a notebook. I suggest that you bring a pad that's a little bit smaller than your references. And that's simply because if things are the same size, they're hard to handle. This way you can easily see your little pad, you can write on it, and it's not covering up the pages that are underneath it. Now you may remember that I also recommended that you have two things in mind during the interview. One is the list of key facts you want to give about yourself. These are points that you want to make during the interview to make sure that you're the very best candidate. You could write those on the top of your pad, but then it's visible to everyone, and if you're taking notes, it can be clumsy. So what I do is I write them on a piece of paper that's just a little bit smaller, and then I slide it underneath the top page. So it's not visible to the people who are interviewing me. But if I want to refresh my memory, what is the key point I want to make, I can just lift this up and take a sneak peek at it during the interview. Another way to do it is simply to write your points on a page that's not the top page. And then you can just lift up the top page and take a sneak peek while you're being interviewed. The second thing that you want to make sure that you bring along are your key questions. When the interviewers ask you at the end of the interview, do you have any questions for us? You should have two good questions that show that you have read their website, that you're interested in the company, and that you want to know a little more. It is okay to write all of these out word for word, but you will look like you're reading if you do that. So what I did in this case is I wrote some partial quotes, and then I wrote some notes to myself about what I want to ask about these things that I found on the website. I personally would find it difficult if I had my key points I want to make and my two questions on the same notepad. I would get confused about which page, which is why I have this smaller piece for my key points. You can decide what works best with you. But these are the key things that you want to bring with you to your interview so that you have everything. You're not trying to remember, oh, what were the three key points I wanted to make? You will be nervous. So having this as an extra little safeguard, I think will make you much more confident and I think you'll perform a little bit better.